Good morning. It is just gone 10 o'clock. We're about a minute late starting, subject to a little IT problem, but hopefully we've overcome that now. So welcome to this formal meeting of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Nigel Pepper, Chairman of this committee. The Vice Chairman, Councillor Paul Skinner, is also in attendance. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and with this in mind, I would like to welcome members of the public watching this live. As the meeting is being streamed in the usual way, I would like to remind you that all your comments will remain accessible online and can be reported by the media. I'd like to begin with a health and safety announcement. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park and wait there. Can I remind everyone to ensure their mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent, please, for the duration of this meeting. Also, may I remind you that the hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman. When invited to speak, you should press the button on your microphone unit to make it live, then press again when you finish your contribution. We will now move on to the formal agenda. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence and replacement councillors. Trina, do we have any apologies?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Alison Austin, Councillor Jackie Brockway, and we've got Councillor Noyd Sear as a replacement member today. Councillor Liz Sneath, we've got Councillor Alex Hall here replacing her for this meeting only, and Councillor William Gray. And we've also had an apology from Lee Surdefield, Assistant Director of Corporate. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Welcome aboard Councillor Sear and Councillor Hall. Item 2, declaration of councillors' interest. Do any members wish to declare any interest, please? No? Okay, we'll move on. Minutes of the previous meeting. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 12th of December 2023 as a correct record. The minutes can be found on pages 5 to 16 of the agenda pack. I did have a little query about that. On page 10, the third paragraph, we've got LRF in there amongst lots of LFRs. I just wonder if it was right. Can you just somebody check on that? So page 10, third paragraph. So we've got here,
yeah, Councillor, you confirm that should be LFR.
sorry, should it be LRF?
Yeah, LFR.
LFR, yeah. Okay, just want to make that clear because we deal with both of those, Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue and the Lincolnshire Resilience Forum, so want to get that straight. Okay, so if we correct that, do I have a proposer and seconder with that in mind, please? So we've got the Vice Chairman proposed, seconder please. Councillor Mr Clark, thank you. So we'll now vote on that. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, we've got 2 abstentions there. Thank you. Thank you, those minutes are agreed. Item 4, announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. As we have a busy agenda, officers are reminded to take their reports as read by committee members and only summarise key points on what support and input is required by this committee. Members are also reminded of the importance of succinct questions and contributions, and that your line of questioning should be relevant and add value to the debate. Moving on, are there any Executive Council announcements, please? No, I take it there's none online. Okay, thank you. Are there any announcements from senior officers? No, thank you. Item 5, Revenue and Capital Budget Proposals 2024-2025. This report is on pages 17 to 24 of the agenda pack and sets out the budget proposals for the Public Protection and Community Services for the financial year 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March 2025, prior to consideration by the Executive at its meeting on the 6th of February. The actions for today are, as were required by the committee are to consider this report and make comments on the budget proposals for consideration by the Executive. The report will be presented by Michelle Grady, Assistant Director Finance. So over to you, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So as you've set out, the report puts together proposals that were made by the Executive for consultation on their meeting of the 9th of January. Their budget proposals brought together some of the updates from the Chancellor's autumn budget statement and our provisional settlement that we were provided with before Christmas. These announcements were in line with previous indications. However, the uplift of the national living wage that was announced at that time was unexpected, which has created a significant pressure from our original assumptions, which provides some challenge for affordability of the services where costs and demands continue to rise. The announcements also confirm that council tax increases could be no more than 5%, which for this council includes a 2% adult social care precept. The forecast that was presented to Executive showed the budget position based on a 2.99% increase for each year over the 4-year period which it covered, which created a deficit position in our budget position of 7 million for 24-25, rising to 15 million over the 4-year period, which required a £49 million use of reserves. On this basis, the Executive were minded to propose a council tax increase of 4.99% for consultation purposes to support the sustainability and provision of our services. Changes in the specific to the Scrutiny Committee, which are included in the report, are tabled at paragraph 2.2 for our revenue proposals, which includes a budget pressure of just over £1 million. The main changes are ongoing support for the costs of fire control and reduction of Home Office grants in the fire and rescue area. In coroners, the establishment of 2 posts to support demand of work, and in the library service, the contract inflation in line with the contract arrangements. It should be noted that pay inflation hasn't been added to the service budgets at present, but it has been budgeted for overall at a level of 4% and will be added to the budgets of the services when those agreements are made. The report also sets out changes to the capital programme. The table at paragraph 3.5 included are relevant to this committee, which include investment in the fire and rescue service via the control room systems and Woodington Training Centre, and for heritage, the purchase of the land at Woodall Spa. So I'm quite happy to take any questions, and your comments obviously go forward to Executive in support of the report.
Okay, thank you. I'd now like to invite members of the committee to comment on this item. Councillor Skinner, do we have any speakers, please? Councillor Mr Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 2.2, it shows a review of the budget on a number of items. Some of those have got no increase at all. Do we think those departments can cope with that, including the pay rise, etc., and other pressures put on them? I would have thought we might have had a small percentage, to, as it were, to give an even Steven on finance each year. Thank you.
So each of the directorates have, each of the ADs and directors in those areas have been consulted on their budgets. The items that haven't been included in those budget proposals at the moment, as I've just mentioned, is the pay inflation. So the staff increases for 24/5 haven't been included in there at the moment, but they have been budgeted for in our contingency to ensure that when those pay awards are given, that they are then added to the service budgets. So they'll be added at that time rather than in this paper. So we have budgeted for that increase overall as a council. They've just not been shown as being added to the service budgets at this time because we don't know what those costs will be at the moment.
Thank you. One more question, please. On item 3.3, the waste transfer stations. There's going to be a 6.1 million investment. I might have missed it, but I didn't see where we were spending that 6 million and how. Or if you could maybe direct me to the right area. Thank you.
So this was a transfer to the capital programme that was actually approved by the Executive in December as part of the current year's budget review. So we've got some underspend in the current year, and we've moved that amount of money because it was relevant to that area. So it was additional income that we've received through the energy from waste plant in year, and that underspend has been transferred into the capital programme to invest in the waste transfer stations. So the investment is around preparing the stations for requirements of the Environment Act, so things like dealing with food waste and other, you know, what goes along associated trucks and whatever they need to do to do that. I don't know what you need to do food waste in a waste transfer station, but that it was about those costs related to that. So that's business cases. So any spend in that area will come through decision making in the normal process. So that was just parking the money there for those investments. The specifics will be done through business case and decision making in the normal way and come through scrutiny.
Okay, thank you for that.
Due to be spent.
One last question on page 23. It lists the number of expenditures. I'm not quite sure whether you'd answer this or whether the chief will answer it. It's about the new control room for the fire brigade. Can you remind me where it's going to be located, and will we be the sole user? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I can confirm that the location of the control is going to stay where it is. So we are currently within the fire and police control room down at Netleham, and we want to stay there. We think it's the right location. It is joint working with our police colleagues, and it will be Lincolnshire's control room. So we are looking at having, for want of a better term, bringing back control of our own control function. And we will ensure that we can maintain that resilience by having partnership working with other fire and rescue services, all working on a similar system.
Thank you, Zara.
Okay, Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to repeat what I've said at a different committee. I don't want to see cuts in public services. Many of those public services are on their knees already, right across the board. So I'm minded at present to support the increase in the rate of council tax, but people too are really struggling. You know, people aren't earning enough to pay their bills, so to have a 5% rise at a time like that again is just going to inflict more difficulty. So with huge reluctance, I can see why we've got to increase council tax, but given that there was a recent announcement from the government that they would finally allocate a little bit more money to local government, I think it's hugely unfortunate that the government didn't make that decision sooner, so that we had a much more certainty around our position. I mean, I'm sure we'll spend the money anyway, and my money's on it going on highways, but there you go. But I just think it's really sad that we didn't know about that extra money till the last minute, and we couldn't perhaps mitigate this increase just a little bit. Thank you.
Michelle.
Yeah, if I could just come back on that. So, as you're absolutely right, Councillor Lee, the announcements from the government were helpful in that they've obviously recognised the concerns of local government, particularly around the national living wage increases, and they've offered a £500 million input to the budget process. We haven't had information about what that means for us. We're expecting our final settlement probably around the time of the February executive, so we're hoping we can table a bit more information there. We can estimate what that would mean for us, and it would go a long way to reduce some of that deficit for 24-5. The challenge is it is only for 24-5, and the costs that we're building into our budget are there as a constant year-on-year cost. So we need to plan for that accordingly. But you know, we'll probably be able to provide an update executive, but we haven't got that information at the moment.
Yeah, briefly just Chair, it just would have been really helpful if we'd have known sooner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Key.
Thank you. Yeah, relatively, it's quite a small amount of money, actually. But on the table at 2.2 and the registration and coroners cost pressures of 100,000 there, it says further down, obviously, about that the coroners have reduced the amount of open cases and the length of time they've been open, and that increases to recruit 2 full-time coroners officers. I'm just wondering how they reduced it without those officers, or whether they were using agency staff and this is actually just formalising what they've already been doing. Thank you.
Okay, I've got
no,
someone.
Yeah, that's me.
Sorry, Martin.
Chairman, yeah, we'd already done an increase of coroners officers into the service, which has caused that increase. These are 2 additional ones for another 2 years to maintain that until we've got a baseline level of our understanding. So we'd already increased it by a number of officers already, and these are 2 additional officers within this year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mr Clark.
Thank you, for Chairman, for letting me come back. On item 3.5, again, it will be probably the Fire Chief can answer this one. We've got down fire fleet and equipment, your replacement and investment programme. Could you give us an idea, please, what the cost of a standard, and I'm not quite sure what you mean by standard either, the usual fire service equipment, like a fire engine, what does that cost us? I've got no idea, so it would help. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that's. I'm probably not going to be able to nail that down as close as you may wish, because that will really dependent on the when we go out to market, depending on the standards and the requirements that we need. But I mean, last time we went out for procurement, a very baseline chassis would probably around about the region of about 100,000. But then you're going to be talking about all the specifications on top of that, the equipment that we require on top of that, and that could make it 180, 190,000. But again, they are really, really ballpark figures, because obviously when we're going to be going out for tender for the next generation of replacements, we may not be looking at the exact same models. We could probably be looking at different capabilities that are based on what our risks for the future will be. So if I'm honest with you, it's going to be difficult to really bring it down to as narrowed into regards to the costing as much as that, really. So it's really a ballpark figure at this moment in time until we go out for the market research.
Thank you for that.
Okay, Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. If memory serves me correctly, through you, Chairman, Mark, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, the last time we procured fire appliances, we bought 33 and it cost us about £8 million.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was including the whole packages, and that including ensuring we had Cobra Cold Cut on all of our appliances, and it was a replacement of a significant amount of equipment in regards to the standards on those appliances. Moving forward, we may not need the replacement of all of those equipments, and we constantly review the life cycle of the equipment and the capabilities to ensure that we don't just replace for replacing sake. We replace on need, on regards to risk, and on regards to usage. So absolutely, that gives a good ballpark figure in regards to the previous costs. I suspect they will be different moving forward.
Okay, so divide 8 million by 33 and let's give you the rough idea. Okay, thank you. Councillor Key.
Sorry, thank you for letting me have another one. This is for Mark as well. The fire door replacement programme, perhaps you could just tell us what that is, because that's £500,000. Are the doors not big enough anymore, or are we having to buy new doors? Thank you.
This is in regards to making sure that we comply with the fire safety regulations, making sure that they are, all of our buildings are safe, and linking in regards to when we've done inspections of properties to make sure that we are adhering to the same legislations of every other organisation. So it will be a mixture of replacement, it will be upgrades, there will be difference in fixing whatever is any shortfalls, but it's making sure that we are adhering to legislation.
Is these the doors where the engines go in and out, or is it other doors?
No, it'll be other doors, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, in relation to paragraph 2.7 and the £614,000 cost pressure due to contract inflation on the library's contract, will this be included in the base budget for the last 2 years of the contract? And how will this impact on the costings for a new contract from April 2026, please?
So this is really catching up with the inflation requirements that are in the current contract with GLL, and that's for the current year and next year as well. So to bring it up to the correct level to pay for the contract that we already have in place. I think Nicole's on the call, so I don't know whether she can provide some information about the library service going forward, if that would help. But this all goes, all these proposals go into the base budget so that they are there as a basis for the service going forward.
Sure, thank you. And as far as you're aware, are there any new risks facing public protection and community services which could impact on the budget in the future?
I would like to say that we've covered the risks with the ADs and the directors that we've talked to, and we do have a contingency planned for next year of £6 million, which we've increased over the last couple of years to deal with some of the volatility around prices, particularly. The contracts are a little bit easier to forecast because they tend to be a year's lag, so we can usually build those in quite safely, but we do have contingency and clearly some general reserves to support us if we do have things coming up that we're not planned for.
Mark.
Yeah, apologies coming back. I should have probably made it a bit clearer, and Michelle just give me a very knowing nod and reminded me. These aren't fire doors within fire stations. This is about fire door replacement within LCC buildings.
Oh, I think it was.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have clarified that at the beginning. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Does Will wish to speak?
Yes, we would like to speak, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor
Will.
Pepper. Good morning, everyone.
Over to you.
I just wanted to add some reassurances over the recommissioning of the library contract. Actually, Louise and my team and I have just come out of CLT this morning. We went to the commissioning board just before Christmas, and actually we will now look to be bringing a paper on this to scrutiny over the next few months. We have absolutely considered the potential impact on budgets of recommissioning, and we will be approaching this in a way that allows for some negotiation of contract. And there are clauses within the current contract as well that can ensure that we maintain an affordable and deliverable library service.
Okay, thank you, Will. Okay, I can see no further comments. So thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. Comments from today's discussion have been captured by Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer, for passing to the Executive. I'm going to propose that the committee supports the budget proposals for public protection and community services for 2024-2025, and that our comments be passed on to the Executive for consideration on the 6th of February. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That's all agreed. We'll now move on to item 6, Community Risk Management Plan 2024 to 2028.
Excuse me, Chair, I wanted to abstain because I have got some concerns. I don't want to vote for, I want to abstain
Okay,
at this
thank
stage.
you for pointing that out. I think that probably was overlooked, so thank you, yeah. So this report's on pages 25 to 108 of the agenda pack and is for pre-decision scrutiny prior to a decision by the Executive on the 6th of February 2024. Our actions are that the committee are required to consider the attached report and determine whether the committee supports the recommendations to the Executive as set out in the report, and agree any additional comments to be passed on to the Executive in relation to this item. The report will be presented by Ryan Stacey, Assistant Chief Officer. So over to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Councillor Pepper. As the Chair just described, this report has been to this Community Protection Committee a couple of times. It came out as a draft consultation document, so I don't propose to labour the Integrated Risk Management Plan too much during this meeting. We did go out to public consultation. It was a 3-phase public consultation. We had a significant success compared to the last time we consulted on our Integrated Risk Management Plan back in 2019. 2019, we garnered in the regions of 270 responses public consultation. Compared to this time, we got nearly 1,000 over a 3-phase consultation period. So the first phase of public consultation, we wanted to understand the public's awareness of risk generally. We then consulted a second time or engaged with the public and wanted to understand how they would prioritise those risks to the community. And then finally, we undertook a public consultation based on the full draft Community Risk Management Plan as it stands, and it's outlined in this report. As a result of that public consultation, we did a couple of things. We removed pandemic from our set of strategic risks. We now consider this to be very much a business continuity event. So we will still plan for it. We'll still plan for the impacts of pandemic. But it doesn't feature as one of our strategic risks. It's much more of a health priority and something that we'll manage through the Local Resilience Forum, as we did during the COVID pandemic. We've also changed slightly the emphasis around malicious attack. So we've moved the emphasis away from what we would consider traditional physical terror attacks towards cyber. So we now have a lot more planning around cyber and the risk to us as an organisation. Clearly, as an organisation, we are, though, managing our response to traditional terror attacks, not least building in the recommendations from the Manchester Arena bombings that happened a couple of years ago. So that impact is being felt throughout the sector, and we are doing a number of actions to enable a better public response to that, an event such as that. In effect, there's no significant change to the way we deliver our service. We will continue to protect the public as we have done, with a few minor changes behind the scenes. We will undertake a number of reviews to the way we provide our service over the coming 4 years to make sure that we're aligned best. Should any of these propose a change in the way we deliver our service, we will come back for full and meaningful public consultation. We feel that's a more a transparent way for the public to hold us to account, and for this committee in general to be able to scrutinise the activity of the Fire and Rescue Service rather than trying to bundle it all into one integrated risk management plan. We will come and do meaningful public engagement should anything change over the next 4 years. And I welcome any questions from the committee.
Okay, thank you. I'd now like to invite members of this committee to comment on this item. Councillor Skinner, do we have any speakers?
We have got Mr. Clark.
Councillor Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 36, at the bottom of the page, it mentions a number of staff. Excuse my ignorance, I'm not au fait with some of your terminologies. Grey book, green book, there's a number of staff there, and then you've stated prevention, protection. Roughly, what do they mean in those concepts, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clark. So grey book and green book are the terms and conditions. So uniformed operational staff are grey book members of staff, and our support colleagues are green book members of staff. So they'll be on local government contracts. So that's the grey and the green book. In terms of prevention and protection, our prevention staff are community safety staff, so they will go out and advise on safety in the home, and our protection staff are trained to undertake legislative fire safety audits, so they will go into businesses and support them to comply with the regulatory reform fire safety order.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
It's just a quick one. Obviously, the risk of floods has increased. Have you upgraded the risk of that within the plan of it happening, and how that impacts on service delivery? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It was in our previous integrated risk management plan. It remains in this community risk management plan. The only thing we have done is we did previously term them both together. So we had risk of wildfire and we had flooding. They were pulled together under severe weather events. We've pulled them apart because, in effect, we deal with them in a very different way. We use the same staff, but we deal with them in a different way. So to provide greater emphasis on the way we deal with those two types of incidents, we have split them to provide us with greater focus.
Councillor Clark. Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Going on to page 41, you mention recruiting issues and retention. Do we ever use an apprenticeship type scheme on the recruiting side? And do you do open days to try and encourage people to come and, as it were, try you out for the day and see if it's something that they want to go with, because then they can talk directly to other employees and understand exactly what the work involves? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clark. Yes, in effect, we do both, is the short answer. In terms of apprenticeships, we do run apprenticeships in various parts of the organisation. It is something we're looking to expand. Need to be careful around terminology. So a traditional apprenticeship, when you bring someone in and you begin to teach them the role very slowly, versus the education style of apprenticeships through the apprenticeship levy, are possibly two separate things, and I wouldn't want to get them confused. So we do access the apprenticeship levy through fire and rescue. We currently do it in a couple of areas, and we're looking to expand that for firefighters in the near future, and work very closely with our county council colleagues. In terms of have-a-go days, we We do run have-a-go days right the way across the county. We run them at a divisional and a fire station level. So that is a structured event that allows people to come in and try the fitness tests that they'll be required to take when they join the organisation, to give them understanding about whether they have the required fitness level. That also enables us to give them fitness plans to help them improve in any areas that they may be struggling in, and it also gives them an opportunity to get to grips with the equipment that they would be using should they be successful in the role.
Thank you very much. That's very enlightening. And on page 49, it mentions wages and gives a figure. Does that include the pensions as well? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly where it's broken down there, that will include pensions. So pension contributions, employers' contributions, yes.
Okay. Councillor Key.
Well, thank you. Could I just ask you about wildfires? Because I know how frightening they can be if they're, they get out of hand really quickly. I'm just wondering how this sort of level of wildfires that we have now compares to the days when farmers used to burn stuff all the time. I mean, although it looks like we've got worse because of the climate and the hot summers, are we still pretty good compared to what we used to be? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the legislation changed to prevent farmers from burning stubble, as we would have expected. That legislation actually changed in the late 90s. So there's been 20 or more years of that legislation not being in place. In truth, we've not done the analysis about the impact of stubble burning. The reality is that as a result of farmers not burning the stubble, that stubble is being used for other things, notably for power station fuel. So that is stacked now and used as fuel for power stations. And we and the power providers take great steps to protect that, because clearly it's business for the power stations. And we work very closely with them to safeguard those stacks. It does happen that we do get fires in those stacks. We've had a couple of notable fires within the county, but we do work very closely with the storage of those materials.
I remember when people used to burn the stubble, and they were always getting out of hand. So probably we're better than we were, but the last couple of hot summers have probably not helped. But they can be really frightening, because I've sort of been where there's been one, and I can understand why it's one of the public's concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly the bigger issue we have was with standing crop. So when that standing crop catches fire, that does cause significant disruption, both to the farmers, who then clearly have lost product, but also to ourselves, because that fire can progress rapidly from one field to the next. So we're looking at different ways that we can perhaps prevent and protect the farming community from incidents such as that.
Okay, thank you. I'm aware Councillor Mrs Clark wishes to comment, but I'll just throw a couple of picky ones in here, if you don't mind. Page 37 mentions co-responder funding being secured until 2024. Page 45 tells us that funding is secured for 2024-2025. Any comments on that?
I suspect it's a typo. We certainly have it funded for 2024-2025.
Sure, yeah. So there's, if you can just correct that.
I'll make sure that's corrected.
Sure. And the other picky one was page 38 mentions the 4,200 miles of road in Lincolnshire. However, last month's Community Risk Management Plan consultation papers told us there are 5,500 miles.
Yes. It was actually this committee that fed in the correction. It should be 5,000 figure.
Sure.
So I'll make sure that's
again,
changed.
just a correction in the report. Just picky ones, as I say. Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark and Ryan. Thank you for the report. It's usually very good, and it's again very good and very informative. I just want to ask you about something I've not noticed before, and that's about malicious attacks. There's only a short paragraph on it, on page 39, a little bit on there. It says that the threat is usually substantial and has been raised to severe, maybe a couple of times. Can you tell me, do you ever anticipate where an attack is likely to be? And do you ever practice on those targets where you think they're most likely to be? I'm just curious, really. That's why I'm asking the question, because I haven't come across it before. So that's why I've picked up on it. I'm just thinking about buildings, possibly other areas of national importance on the East Coast. I'm not going to say it. I just wondered if you actually practiced with them in case, like when we have resilience practices, is it a similar sort of thing? Do you carry it out? Thank you.
Yes, is the very short answer to that. The risk of malicious attack is something that we derive from the National Strategic Risk Register, which is published on a 5-yearly basis and updated on an annual basis. We work with the local resilience forum in order to look at how we would respond as multi-agency response. Those sites of critical national infrastructure where we have a heightened risk of a terror-style attack, we will work with colleagues to make sure there are plans produced, and then we exercise those plans on a periodic basis to make sure that they're suitable and sufficient.
Councillor Key.
Yes, so it's a staffing one now, page 92. The other question I wanted to ask was about the people from ethnic backgrounds. And obviously, it must be difficult for you, but I'm wondering what we're doing to sort of get nearer to the population average of, I think it's 4%, yeah, 4%, and we're at 0.89%. I know they're little percentages, but obviously we're only a quarter of the way towards the overall population level. Thank you.
Yes, and it is it's not an excuse, it's a difficult thing to do. We're a small organisation, so in terms of whole-time firefighters, so full-time frontline firefighters, we've got circa 100 members of staff. So although 4 members of staff to meet that population figure of 4% sounds achievable, we only need to lose one of those members of staff and we're back down at 3%. So the numbers don't help us in every respect. In our people plan for this year, we've got a number of events that we're looking to run. There's not one solution. There's a societal issue around the job of a firefighter being accessible to members of the black and ethnic minority communities. We do work with those communities. We're looking to expand that work within Lincolnshire. The population, as you said, is very small within Lincolnshire, circa 4%. So we are looking at strengthening what we do. Our Have a Go days, as I referred to Councillor Mr Clark earlier, we do run some positive action versions of those events where we will go out and target very specific elements of the community. So we will run them for female members of the community and black and ethnic minority members of the community as well, so that we can target.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think the percentages are very helpful, are they? Because we're dealing with small numbers of people. If you have one person leave, it puts your percentage out. So perhaps numbers are more important than percentages.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely. And it's not an excuse not to do anything, and it certainly is something we are focused on.
Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to apologize for my lateness just due to the traffic. The only thing which is I was thinking about a long time ago, in Boston we created these mini police in schools. Have you thought about creating mini fire, fighters in schools, which can bring them back just, to be aware of the jobs you do and, if they can see a career in them in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Danny. We do work in schools. What we don't want to do is create a parallel fire scheme and dilute the impact of the mini police, which is a very successful scheme for policing. We do run fire cadets at a number of locations around the county, and it's something that we're looking to expand that scheme and looking at how we can bridge the transition between an individual leaving fire cadets at around 16, keeping them interested, motivated, and then joining the fire and rescue service at 18. We do get a number of people who have gone through the organisation. In fact, we've got station managers within the organisation now and higher who were fire cadets back in the day. So it is a successful scheme for recruitment. I think what we do need to do is join the two dots. So positively attract minority groups to the fire cadets and then use that as the point of entry for the fire and rescue service. So we're trying to join two areas in parallel, and our people plan over the next 4 years will address some of that.
Okay, thank you. Ryan, admittedly there's not many high-rise buildings in Links. Do these need a mention? Similarly, student accommodation, HMOs, do they need to be are mentioned in the report?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, another area that we did have in our last integrated risk management plan that we consulted on in 2019. Clearly, that was on the back of the tragic incident at Grenfell Tower. A significant number of changes in fire safety legislation and building regulations has ensued as a result of that, and we now consider that to be business as usual. So yes, there are circa 19 premises that we would define as high-rise within the county, and clearly a number of buildings which, although not defined as high-rise, have multiple floors. We do a lot of work with our fire protection teams from a legislative fire safety perspective, and we do a lot of work with our response teams in terms of exercising our procedures at some of those high-rise buildings. And in fact, we've changed some of the equipment that we carry to provide safe egress, safe method of escape for members of the public should there be incidents in those big protracted buildings. But it is a business as usual activity now, so not something that we would necessarily focus quite the same amount of effort on reducing the risk, because we feel we've got it down to a tolerable level with the changes in legislation and the equipment that we carry. That doesn't mean that we're not continuing to monitor it very closely.
And you don't feel that necessarily means a special mention in the report?
Not compared to some of the other risks that the residents in Lincolnshire face, no.
Okay, thank you. A lot of the report, Ron, is about where we are at the moment and very little on the future outside of the 2028. But I note some fire authorities mention their intentions for the future in their CRMPs. I note one fire authority stated knocking down 2 fire stations and building a superstation and things like that. Should it be in the plan, for instance, that, I don't know, we're thinking about building a station at Leverton, or we're going to replace so many fire appliances in a certain amount of time? Because they're all community type issues, aren't they?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pepper. A station such as Leverton wouldn't warrant mention within our risk management plan, because the station that we propose to build will be a like-for-like replacement as part of our capital estates programme. Should we be wanting to change the use of Leverton, change the location of Leverton, then absolutely that will come out to a public consultation. Some of those services are looking at amalgamating stations that are close to each other. I wouldn't want to set hairs running by throwing any names in the air. It's certainly nothing that we're looking at in the next 4 years. We may do some work to undertake a review of that in the next 4 years, and that might be subject to public consultation at that point. But we've certainly not got anything on the back burner that we'd be looking at tabling in the next 4 years.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you for mentioning Boston, in particular Leverton, which is in my ward. So
I'll try.
Really happy about that. Thank you, and thank you for the reassurance that should the land progress further, that our fire service should have the facilities that they deserve, because they are a little bit basic where they are at the moment. Anyway, our risk assessment should evolve, and I take a lot of reassurance in the fact that this is evolving. And you look at the trends within the report, generally domestic fires are down, other fires are down, and yet on the other side of it, flooding's up. So you've got plenty of water to deal with the fires you haven't got. Of more concern for me is the RTCs are up, and that is alarming that that's going up. In expecting the unexpected, are we confident that the risk assessment we've got in place will address all these risks? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, road safety is something that we are very committed to providing our weight behind. We are active members of the Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership, and that is where it's the delivery mechanism for a lot of our work. So we recognise that as a fire and rescue service there's a lot we can offer, but we shouldn't be doing it in isolation. So we do that through the Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership. We currently undertake work in secondary schools in terms of education. The reality is there's a huge amount of additional traffic on the roads, and that accounts for some of the increase. So road traffic has increased at a disproportional rate compared to, for example, housing and general population growth. So it's been a much more rapid rise from 2 to 3 car ownership within houses compared to the population within the county. The road network as well has changed and evolved over the last 20 or so years. We do work really closely with the Road Safety Partnership to understand where we can have an impact, and a lot of this actually is on the development of road networks rather than the education of the public. In terms of that hierarchy of risk, we would look to engineer out the risk on the roads and not rely on the education of the members of the public. But we do work with police around alcohol and drug driving. We work in schools in terms of the impact of driving carelessly and negligently. But we need a 3 or 4 pronged approach in terms of road safety.
Okay. Councillor Key.
Yeah, sorry, I'm allowed another one. Thank you. This is to do with the staff again, and obviously the well-being of the staff, which I think is on page 47 on here. But I witnessed a car crash recently, and I must admit I was really shaken up. I had to deal with it and contact everybody and sort the person out who was in a car that was on fire. But I'm just wondering, these staff who go out to these accidents, I can only imagine what they have to deal with. How do you cope with that as an organisation? And because it really upset me what I had to deal with, and I'm not doing it every day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Again, a number of prongs on that approach. So we do have a well-embedded welfare team. So these are people with a level of counselling training that work within and outside of our organisation. So we've got a well-embedded process where should a crew attend an incident where there's likely to be a trigger, recognising that a trigger for you might be different from a trigger for me, but we'd have a broad range of incident types, incidents involving young people, incidents involving fatalities and other certain specialist interest type of incidents. We would routinely offer and be proactive in the offer of welfare support. That would often take the view of having a critical incident debrief, so bringing that crew together, giving them an opportunity and an outlet to talk about it. That is one of the areas where the shift pattern that we work and the closeness of those crews does pay dividends. There is that support within the organisation. We also recognise that our on-call crews, as Councillor Pepper would be aware, they do work differently, so they would, at the end of an incident, have a limited period of time with which to diffuse the incident type they've been to before they go home to their families, and that's the same with our flexible duty response officers. So we make sure that we put in place additional controls for them, so we would expect that they get a welfare call as well. In addition to that, which is a very formal offering, we also have mental health first aiders within the organisation. We call those within Lincolnshire Fire peer support team. So there's that offer of support through that informal network of peer support. And then at the level above that, through our occupational health, we also have access to counsellors, trained counsellors for post-traumatic stress type incidents. And then within the county council, finally, we also have the ability to self-refer to a counselling service free of charge at that point of use. So there are a number of avenues for staff to get the help they want, and we've taken a lot of steps over the last probably decade to ensure that we remove the stigma of mental health and the fact that particularly in a male-dominated workforce, people feel that it's a normal thing to come forward and say, I'm struggling with something.
Thank you. I think when obviously I saw what I saw and it was okay, nobody was sort of seriously hurt, but I think it brings to mind the gratitude that we owe all of our staff for dealing with things that we never want to deal with. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. In paragraph 3.2 on page 31, it mentions that the risk analysis will be revisited periodically throughout the life of the CRMP to ensure that the focus remains on the greatest risks. Can you just tell me what will the frequency for the risk analysis, what will the frequency be for?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. It would be 2 years. So we do it at the midpoint of the integrated risk or the community risk management plan. So we would expect to do it in 2 years from the publication date. So that's the midpoint.
Okay, thank you. And how will your performance against the CRMP be assessed? Will there be any performance measures and or an action plan to assess how well the CRMP is being implemented?
Yes, thank you. We will bring back to this committee on an annual basis in July an end-of-year review, so that will coincide with our statement of assurance. So we will bring forward each year, 1 quarter after the end of the year, to give us an opportunity to analyse what has been delivered and we'll be able to set out what we've achieved against what we said we'd achieve.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dunny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. We talk about fire, we talk about floods, we talk about everything. Something comes to my mind. If we get a heavy snow, are we prepared to tackle that issue? Because it can happen anytime.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that we cover under severe weather. You'll be aware we've identified a number of our highest priority community risks within our community risk management plan. That's not to say that we don't have mitigating control measures on the other risks that sit just outside of that. So the impact of severe weather such as snow, tidal surge would also fit within our risk management plan, but they just don't make that strategic document. So we do have plans in place for those business continuity events.
Councillor Dunny. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have, the right equipment, if it does happen, to get anywhere around the county?
Anywhere is a very broad description. So we have done a piece of work around gritting routes. So we do understand where our fire stations are in relation to gritting routes, where our employees live, particularly our on-call staff, in relation to those gritting routes. We do have a number of four-wheel drive vehicles within the organisation and all-wheel drive vehicles within the organisation to make sure that we are able to respond in every area within the county. Clearly, there is an acceptance that the time taken for us to arrive at some of those incidents may be delayed, should they be very remote, very rural. But we are not a community that's got the remote rurality of somewhere like the North Highlands of Scotland. But we do have some of that resource in place in terms of four-wheel drive capability.
Okay. See no further comments, so thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. Our comments from today's discussion have been recorded by Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer, for passing on to the Executive. I propose that the committee supports the recommendations to the Executive and we agree to pass on our comments. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dunny. I'm now going to take it to the vote, so we'll now vote on that. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? And any abstentions? Okay, thank you, that's unanimous, so that's carried. Item 7, Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Attendance at Flooding Incidents, Annual Report on Performance up until March 2023. This item can be found on pages 109 to 116 of the agenda pack and provides the committee with an update on the flooding incidents that Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue has attended since 2018 to enable members to be aware of the risks in Lincolnshire. Our actions required are that members of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee are invited to review the contents of this report and comment on the fire service's approach to supporting the local communities. The report will be presented by Mark Baxter, Chief Fire Officer. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor. So this report, as is just outlined there, is just our annual report, and it is just about the fire and rescue response to flooding. I am conscious in the last 2 months there's been an awful lot of spotlight in regards to the wide-scale response to flooding. But just to context, I won't be able to be touching on this report. It's going to be purely about fire and rescues, the impact for fire and rescue, and up to 2022-23. So it won't be covering the period of Storm Babette and Storm Henk at this moment in time. But so in regards to this report, again, as I said, the annual report that's coming through, so the trends that are really being identified is over the 5-year period, our average response figures are increasing. We've gone from previously an average of responding to 90 incidents up to 167. We recognise that within 2022-23 there was 192 incidents that we responded to, and out of that there was 161 times we sent specialist assets, is probably the best way of describing that, which was a significant increase in the year before. The tables do show that it can be quite up and down in each year, depending on the weather events. So it's difficult to predict whether we're going to be getting a significant amount of flooding from one year to the next. But I think the direction of travel is that there is a steady increase on the impact for fire and rescue resources. Another table is really identifying is when we've had the peaks in the months of the year over a 3-year period, and really the trends again is identifying that is there seems to be more of a shift of if I'm honest, it can happen at any point during the year, whereas previously we had a higher risk of specific seasons, but that doesn't seem to be the case now. We do seem to be getting flooding at various points in the year. So in regards to preparation, we recognise that actually we should be stood up and ready to respond to flooding at any point during the year. In regards to the areas that are being flooded, again, the heat maps that we've got on the report, again, there are some specific areas, particularly on the east coast, down at the south, and also around in the Lincoln area, we do respond to more generally. However, we do get localised flooding pretty much in all areas of the county when we have severe weather events. And then probably the final area just to touch on is the type of assets and the resources that do get we use to respond. Again, the vast majority of our incidents are being dealt with by our fire appliances and sending our appliances there to pump out any properties. We do also utilise the 4 specialist flood pumps, although they haven't been used as much within 21-22, 22-23. But again, although I wasn't going to touch on it, they were used significantly through Storm Babette and Storm Henk. And then the other assets that are get used more regularly is our high volume pump that we have within the county, and also we have the opportunity to use the National Resilience assets, which are high volume pumps that are located in other fire and rescue services across the country that we have brought into the county to support us at various times over this period. So, recognising that's the picture. In the summary, we are seeing a gradual increase in regards to demands on flooding fire and rescue services. It is sporadic. It does seem to be affecting more areas of the county with the severe weather events. And in regards to the assets that we are responding, at the moment we're feeling comfortable that we've got the appropriate assets and requirements, and more importantly, the trained staff with the required PPE and equipment to be able to work in those risk areas and support our communities that are going through those floodings at the time. So that's a summary of the report. Councillor, happy for questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Skinner, do we have any wishing to comment? Councillor Key.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I know you just said that you're comfortable with the assets you've got, and I'm looking at the assets on page 115. Forgetting about budgets, if you could have whatever you wanted without any cost implications, is there anything we haven't got that we perhaps could have if money wasn't an issue? Thank you.
Well, there you go.
Thank you. That's a great wish list question. Thank you. I think in the type of assets that we got, I think actually Lincolnshire is quite well served in regards to the actual type that we've got. Now, if I'm honest, how we've evolved in regards to assets is probably around about 12 or 13 years ago, we managed to obtain funding through DEFRA to purchase 10 boats with engines, power boats that are able to operate in fast-flowing water, which we've still got those assets. But actually what we've learned over this period of time is that wasn't necessarily the key assets that we need. What we really need is probably the rafts and the inflatable rescue rafts that we're able to utilise to walk and wade through water to be able to get to vulnerable people and be able to get them out of the risk area, where most often power boats won't be the answer to that. However, we have still got those assets because actually that is still a foreseeable risk that we need those. So it's probably more in regards to those inflatable raft type equipment that we can access people to get them out of the homes if they needed to. So that's one area, but we do have those assets, and we'll continue to review that, whether we need more of those or not. In regards to the pumping equipment, so bear in mind this would be a multi-agency response that we have. So fire and rescue have a role in regards to supporting floodings, but there are also responsibility in that partnership working particularly with the Environment Agency and particularly with the internal drainage boards that also provide specialist pumps, and we focus at where we can put them at the source of the issues to actually reduce the impact. Our appliances and also our flood pumps are really there to help when we're actually at the properties to just try to move water to try and reduce it. But if I'm honest with you, they'll only can do as much as what they can do. So in regards to capabilities, I think we're comfortable with the type of capabilities. Do we need more of them? I think we're going to do that review, particularly from the outcomes of Storm Babette and Storm Henk, to see if there's anything else that we can do to support the communities in that area. I hope that gives you an answer.
In that table that Councillor Key mentions, it just says a pump. Attended most of those incidents. Now, I know what you mean by a pump, but to the layman, it doesn't describe that asset particularly well, pump. Does it need enlarging? Does that need describing a bit better?
Yeah, so forgive me, I didn't quite articulate that. One of you said our vast majority, that's our fire appliance.
Yeah.
That's a pump is our fire appliance, standard fire appliance that you would expect to see going to house fires, going to the RTCs. They have a pumping capability, which is part of their core capabilities. That's traditionally what we would refer to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. Forgive me if I missed it, Mark, at the beginning of your presentation, but could you just refresh our memories on where fire and rescue's statutory duties start and stop, and how we work with our partner agencies in flood situations?
Absolutely, Councillor. A really important point. So for the offset, it's just probably clear, flooding isn't a statutory duty of the fire and rescue. It isn't part of our core responsibilities. However, what we do recognise, we have the capabilities, we have the trained staff, and there is clearly a need out there in the community. So we are there to support the communities in those events. We do have duties under the Civil Contingencies Act 2004, which is played out through the Local Resilience Forum, that we come together as partner agencies to support communities when they are being faced with significant events that is impacting on our community. So that is where our statutory duties and obligations lie in regards to responding to those major events. But we don't get the statutory duties specifically for flooding, which means we don't get the direct funding that comes in regards to delivering on those duties. So the fact that we are able to support our communities during flooding events is through the support that LCC in regards to the budget setting and those assets that have been provided for us. That doesn't come with statutory funding.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a really important point that perhaps the public don't realise, because the first reflex when you're in a flooding situation is to call for the fire service, and maybe that's something that we can be proud of, that our service is actually doing all of this, which actually, legally speaking, they perhaps don't need to, but thank God they are doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I think I want to just echo some of the points that have already been made, and I take your point totally about not being able to speak specifically about the recent floods. But looking at this, the numbers that you quoted from page 109, it's gone up in 5 years from 90 incidents a year to, I think it says on here, 167, doesn't it? That's nearly double, isn't it, in 5 years? So it's a huge increase. For me, there are two real problems. First of all, I don't think people know who to call. The flooding on Sinsel Bank, I was getting phone calls. People don't know who to call. And that is a massive problem. And the second thing, as two colleagues have said, and the FBU has said, there's no statutory duty to plan to or respond to floods. And since 2010, there according to the FBU, there's been a loss of 1 in 5 firefighter jobs since 2010. So you've got fewer people to do more work. Central government funding has been cut by 30%. And I read, when I did some research on this prior to last full council, people have a go at the Environment Agency, but they've lost, I think it's almost 50% of their funding since 2010 as well. So everyone's money has been cut, and yet you're being expected to do more. And the National Audit Report last November highlights that there's a lot of talk about we need to plan for this, but actually central government aren't doing that. So I think whilst we're scrutinising you today, I think we also need to think very closely about what central government, what their role in all of this has been over the last decade. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman, and I thank Councillor Lee for her comments. Members will be aware that the multi-agency response to storms Babette and Henk will be covered by the Flood and Water Management Scrutiny Committee's inquiry, which starts on the 16th of February. So I know it's really tempting for members to want those answers to those questions, but this will all be covered in great detail at that committee. So, Councillor Lee, if you, I don't know, if you want to attend that, if you want to put some questions into that, I'm sure that's really where they will be better addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, basically, in this storm season in the UK, we're on our 10th named storm. Fortunately, they haven't all hit here, but Babette generated 2,000 inquiries in 2 days. That is quite a volume to be dealing with. I mean, basically, all we've got to be confident is, did we manage to cover all the events where life was at threat?
Okay, so thank you. So yeah, a really good point to bring through, and it does link into the discussion about statutory duties. So we do receive an enormous amount of calls when we have flooding events. When they come into our control room, they need to triage and risk assess all calls that come in, and they do that on a risk of life basis. We will respond to any incident, particularly within the flooding environment. If there is a risk to life, there is no question in that. We'll also prioritise our assets to support any infrastructure within the county that will have an impact on people's well-being and welfare, and ensuring that the county is still able to operate. So in answer to your question, yes, we responded to all life risk incidents because that is where our statutory duty does lie. And it also ensures that we still have assets available, because we will still be responding to house fires, we will still be responding to road traffic collisions, which is within our statutory duty response. So we need to continually balance our availability to ensure that we can meet all of those demands. So I know it can often feel frustrating from members of the public when they get through to our control and we're sometimes not able to send an asset if the case either their property it may be about to flood or there is water coming through. However, we do need to prioritise to putting our resources to where people's lives are at risk.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mr Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I was glad to hear your comments regarding the large mobile pumps that we purchased some time ago. Going forward, do you think we might need to purchase more, or maybe persuade some of our partners that they buy more pumps? Because obviously we all feel that this is going to happen time and time again over the next few years. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the work we're doing in regards to going through some of the learning from the two recent flooding events. I think your observation that it should be a multi-partnership arrangement to understanding what type of pumps and where we need them to mitigate where the flooding comes through, and I think that work and that review is ongoing at this moment. In regards to specifically fire and rescue, again, that is something we're looking at an internal review, and it will absolutely feed into the review that Councillor Corey has just been speaking about within the flood and water management, to see if that would create a benefit for how we respond to future flooding. So I'm cautious to say whether we would need them at this moment in time, because I think we still need to do some more data analysis. But absolutely, I think we've got the perfect forum through the Flood and Water Management Group to be able to understand that fully. And if we need to, then we would put a request in through there.
Okay, Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark. I just really wanted to clarify, and I think really for confusion as well, there's a lot of confusion around flooding, and people do react and will want to call you for surface water flooding, and that's not mentioned in this report because your statutory duty is around keeping life safe. So I think there's some confusion around surface water flooding. I know I can only speak for my division. There has been a lot of surface water flooding, and it actually can run down a road to the point where you could float a little boat on it. Actually, that is happening, and those incidents are occurring more and more across the city centre. So while I appreciate you will have all the facilities available to you, there is some confusion to the public, I think, about what flooding is, because I know Anglian Water will say that's not flooding, that's excess surface water, and it can be caused by traffic and be caused by all sorts of things, but it can actually be caused by so many things that is so confusing to the public, and they have little understanding around it, and perhaps we could ask for some clarification on that and the statutory duties that Councillor Corey has quite rightly pointed out for yourselves, because life comes first. Thank you.
Absolutely, I think it's a really important subject, because as you quite rightly pointed out, there are different causes of flooding that's becoming more apparent. I think in regards to the general public, they're probably less concerned about the cause. If they're seeing water coming through into their properties, they want somebody to come and help them. But so I think it is right that there is some of that wider understanding of the causes, and actually a focus on the root cause. And if there's any way that can be prevented in regards to that. Now, the data and the figures that we've got on this report, within there will be, though, the different types of flooding within there, either surface water, pluvial flooding, etc., which we haven't broken down, but I can try and look at getting some of that data to help breaking that down. Within there, out of the 192 incidents that we did respond to, although it said 161 that we actually sent the physical assets, the other 31 incidents we would have been sending an officer to go in there to inspect, to give advice, to give us support, and more often that does relate to surface water flooding.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it's important for clarity. Public need to be aware who to contact, because actually we need to relieve the pressure on our service there. We can't have public calling for surface water flooding because they panic when they see volumes of water. So who to contact? I know you know who to contact, and you would do it. You actually do attend surface water flooding. I know you've been out and done it. But it would be helpful to public now, bearing in mind we have pressure on NHS. We don't want pressure on our fire, our other services. So practice to make sure that they know who to contact first, not automatically knee-jerk reaction to the fire service. Thank you.
I guess that'll come out in the Flood and Water Management Board meeting. Perhaps you can make inroads there, Tracy, to make sure that it does. Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Sear. Oh, okay. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, it's just a brief comment, Nikki. At the council meeting in December, where we talked about this at great detail, I asked if we could have something in the county news that said, this is who you call for what. And the answer that I keep getting back is, oh no, because we don't publicise other people's duties and phone numbers, just in case they're wrong. And I think it's utterly ridiculous. We spend council taxpayers' money on that publication, and we could put some information in there that would actually be some use to them. So once again, I would repeat that request. Perhaps you could underline and join me. Thank you.
And the chairman agrees to it too. Councillor Corey.
I didn't indicate, but thank you very much,
Well,
Chairman.
he's providing with duff information here then.
No,
Okay, thank you. Mark, some of the worst... Oh yeah, okay. Councillor Mrs Clark.
I don't mean to be picky. I think if we're looking at we're looking at various changes that are happening to our county. And I think, fair point to Councillor Lee, we need to then look at that contact list and adjust it. If we think that there is a contact that needs to be more specific for a service to relieve a pressure, to help that along. So I think fair point there. You know, we know what's going to happen. We know there's a climate change and a global change going on. We know there's going to be a water thing. Lincolnshire can be flat in many areas, and we know where our flooding hotspots are going to be. We know where our low points are. So actually, it might be useful to review that at some point in time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Some of the worst floodings, Mark, is when water has entered buildings. And I think that table there about flooding-related incidents by type and financial year, I think it would have been more meaningful if we could have drilled down to, said, water in dwellings, water in business premises, or whatever. But I'd like your views on that.
Yeah, we can. I can go back and get some more data analysis in regards to that to provide that, so that there's a clearer picture in regards to the type of premises and properties that are being impacted, in particularly in regards to whether there's residential or whether it's business premises, etc. So yeah, we can come back and provide that level of detail.
Perhaps not necessarily come back, but I think maybe for future reports, if we include that, so you create a picture in the mind of, how many dwellings have been flooded, whatever. Yeah. I'm just been informed that County News, it's got in there about heavy rain forecast. It tells you what number to dial. Okay. Right, moving on. I appreciate the annual report is for performance up until March 2023. We'll soon be going to be close to the next year, aren't we? January now, March. How's things looking?
So in regards to the impact, clearly it's going to be significantly higher in this current year. I mean, what we do know within Storm Babette over the 6 days, we did receive 605 calls for flooding-related incidents, and we responded to 175 properties. So even through that period there, that's pretty much nearly touching on the whole of 22-23. In regards to Storm Henk, we're still going through the data analysis to understand what that is, but we don't see it as being quite as high as Storm Babette. But putting just those two events together, then yeah, we're very confident that we're going to be seeing a significant spike in regards to 23-24.
Okay, thank you. See no one else wishing to speak, so thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. I'm going to propose that the committee is satisfied with the fire services performance and its approach to supporting the local communities during flooding incidents, and ask that their comments and suggestions from the debate today are taken under consideration by officers. Can members please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That is everyone agreed. Thank you. Item 8, Lincolnshire Local Resilience Forum Business Plan 2023 to 2026. This item can be found on pages 117 to 140 of the agenda pack and provides a summary of Lincolnshire's Local Resilience Forum Business Plan 2023 to 2026, which outlines the strategic objectives that are to be delivered over the next 3 years. Their actions are, members of the Public Protection Community Scrutiny Committee are invited to review and comment on the contents of this report, and also agree to receive an annual update of progress against the LRF Business Plan 2023-2026. The report will be presented by Mark Baxter, Chief Officer. So over to you again, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor. So this report is it's probably a new subject that we brought to this scrutiny committee, conscious that the Local Resilience Forum is a body that under the Civil Contingencies Act 2004 comes together all the multi-agencies to be able to respond to significant events within the county. So the business plan is really the Local Resilience Forum's commitment over the 3 years to ensure that they can maintain and deliver against the planning and the response is to what the agreed risks are within the county. And the risks, again, are come through from the national risk assessment that, again, as we touched on earlier within the previous report, comes out every 5 years and is reviewed annually by the Cabinet Office, and that is aligned over what Lincolnshire's risks are as well. The Local Resilience Forum is a body, a separate entity, if that makes sense, but it is made up of what's called Category 1 and Category 2 responders, which are outlined in the report. And it is a mechanism to bring all of those agents together to respond to the collective risks that are identified. This business plan is our commitment to see how we can, through the next 3 years, plan, prepare, train and exercise and ensure that we have appropriate plans in place and we're able to stand up and deliver against those plans, either at a no-notice incident or as and when there is a planned incident where we do get a lead in time to bringing that through. And that links into what is an agreed strategic aim that has been agreed by all of the responders, and that is to establish and maintain the effective multi-agency arrangements to respond to major incidents and emergencies, minimise the impact of those emergencies on the public, properties and environment of Lincolnshire to satisfy fully the requirements of the Civil Contingencies Act. So there is a statutory duty that the LRF does stand up to respond to those type of events. We have outlined 5 strategic objectives over the next 3 years that are outlined in the report. Again, part of that is not only about preparing all agencies to know what their responsibilities are, but there will be a significant input in regards to what we class as a whole societal approach, and then that is ensuring that our communities understand what those risks are and also how we can help them help themselves in regard to preparing for or what actions they should take in the event of any major incident. Out of those 5 strategic objectives, we've identified 19 key deliverables that are in the appendix, and that is part of the things that we will do to support those strategic objectives. We are looking at managing that through our Programme Management Board that sits quarterly, and they will be reporting in regards to the progress of those 19 deliverables, which is the intention that we can give an annual update to this Scrutiny Committee on the progress of the business plan. I suppose a question I'd just like to answer really is, why is there a business plan coming to this Scrutiny Committee? We haven't done that previously. This links in regards to Cabinet Offices and through DLUC, Stronger LRF's agenda that was launched last year. Part of that Stronger LRF agenda was ensuring that across the UK, LRFs have a fairly consistent approach in regards to the governance, in regards to how they respond and how they feed up into Cabinet Office. There were 3 areas within the Stronger LRF programme, which was leadership, accountability and integration. We've had representation from DLUC who have assessed Lincolnshire's Local Resilience Forum, and actually they are viewed as in our LRF, as one of the stronger LRS within the UK. And actually, but when we looked at ourselves, we saw the one area where we felt we can be stronger was in regards to accountability and transparency to ensure the people of Lincolnshire and as elected members yourself has greater oversight and scrutiny in regards to what the LRF is looking to achieve and to get a greater understanding of what the LRF delivers and ensuring that we are being able to deliver against those 19 deliverables to ensure that we can have the best response we can. Again, and I think it's probably pertinent to say, is one of those key strategic objectives is about ensuring that we learn from every event and from all exercising, and I think that's quite pertinent in regards to, again, the floodings that we've mentioned over the last few months, and the whole of that review and the debriefing process is continuing for us to be able to identify if there's any improvements that we can have within the LRF to support the communities of Lincolnshire. That's really a summary of the reasons why we've got the business plan and the outline of it, and open for questions, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. I'd now like to invite members of the committee to speak on this item. Councillor Skinner, do you have any speakers? Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark. I just want to draw your attention to the comment you made about whole societal approach. Last year, you might remember that there was an exercise taken out across the country about mobile phone connectivity should there be a major incident. I'm assuming that's what that was for. As part of this resilience planning, should there be a major incident, is there a plan to include a digital approach to warn the general public via their mobile phones? Thank you.
Yes, that is an area that's been a real focus. The government recently launched Emergency Alert, which is a system and a process that will enable key messages to be sent to all mobile phones down to a postcode and almost in a postcode level area. That can be initiated either from government, Cabinet Office or from DLUC, or it can be initiated at a local resilience forum level. So that has been introduced at the back end of last year, and so that is one area that is being focused on at the moment. Part of our planning when the LRF does stand up, one of the key considerations is, does this incident warrant an emergency alert usage in regards to that? It hasn't deemed warranted in the two floodings, because it does have to be very, very specifically when there is significant risk to life in a very specific area. But that is definitely one area that is being looked at and is looking at evolving as well.
Okay, thank you. The top risks in Lincolnshire are mentioned. There's probably about 8 or so there. What other types of risks do you get called? Would the LRF get called to, in addition to those?
So to be honest with you, it can be anything really. But we haven't really been called to many incidents that are outside of those risk categories. But really fundamentally, it's probably important that we can be called together whenever either one single agency has an event or a situation where they feel they're not able to respond to it with their own resourcing and within their own capabilities. So in essence, it's an opportunity to call for mutual aid for us to come together to support whatever that impact will be. Obviously, probably the most recent impact that we had within the LRF was during the pandemic. And obviously the LRF was probably stood up for approximately nearly 2 years in regards to coordinating that whole approach to how we can support the communities. Following that period, we can be stood up and for, as I say, no notice events. So, for example, there was if there's been an example of a potential bomb threat or a potential significant event where we may need to come together to gather information and intelligence to see if we do need to respond. We have, through exercising, probably more recently come together and touching on Councillor Clark's point, is if we're having a significant business continuity event. So if there's a loss of service, either through IMT or through any other means, that anything that's going to impact on infrastructure. So it can be quite wide and varied, but I think the most common planning assumption that is demonstrated outside of the pandemic that we had is going to be severe weather. So we are really focused on how we respond to that.
Sure. We've talked a lot about water, but a couple of years or so back, during a long, hot, dry spell, as a community in my division, which hadn't got any water at all, because the subsoils were shrinking, the mains parts were bursting, and I think it's more than Angling Water could cope with by taking bottles of water, because I think it went on for a few days. I know a call was made to the LRF at that time. Don't know the outcome, but that's one I was aware of.
Yeah, so examples like that will happen every now and again, and the LRF will come together and they will, for example, using that example, work with Anglian Water to understand actually what is the gap that Anglian Water or any other agency aren't able to fill, and what is going to be the impact in regards to either a select area of the communities or the wider communities. And so the scale of how the LRF stands up will be absolutely proportionate to what the event was. Examples like that will be, all they're offering is what can we do with all our agency skills to support those communities during that period. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to have the full command and control structure stood up, but it actually is about bringing those agencies together to see how they can support the people that need that.
Sure. I couldn't see anything in the report. I think I'm thinking now about the Wainfleet flooding, when Chinook helicopters were used to drop ballast in the breach. I couldn't see any coordination there with the forces. I mean, did they just come along of their own accord and drop bags in, or was there some kind of coordinated approach?
Absolutely. So the MOD, Ministry of Defence, they are absolutely an important member of the LRF. They attend all of our strategic coordinating group meetings and our tactical coordination group meetings. In regards to how we get that support is a very bespoke process, which is called through MACA, which is a Military Aid Civilian Authority, thank you, Ryan, a request that we work with the MOD with. So in regards to the Wainfleet example, when we knew relatively early we would probably be going to be requiring military support, that government liaison officer was making those conversations through into Cabinet Office very early to get that agreement through the Ministry of Defence to provide that very specialist asset. So to give you some assurance, you're right, they don't just turn up, it comes through quite a lot of discussion and debate to understand what is the actual need for the asset. And then once that is agreed, then we have a very close coordinating group that will bring that asset in.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to start off. At the beginning of December at Full Council, I said a huge thank you to everybody who took part in protecting our communities during these floods, and I'd repeat that. I know sometimes I'm critical about things, but I think you do a very good job in very difficult circumstances. Absolutely. That's the first point that I'd make. The second thing, it worries me a little bit. There's something on here, I think it's page 123 I was looking at. It talks about how communities can help themselves, but I think at the end of the day, we have to realise that people in communities have different capacities to help themselves in terms of flooding. Not everyone's got the physical mobility, not everyone's got the financial capacity, and at the end of the day, ordinary people pay taxes for public services, and we should be able to expect to be looked after properly out of those services and for that money to be spent properly. But that's not something I'm criticising you for, that's bigger than that. I think going forward, there's got to be much, much greater emphasis on prevention. We've seen the way this is going, and a lot of the talk is about how we deal with it when it actually hits us. It's got to be much more about preventing it happening in the first place, because it is just so distressing for everybody involved. But thank you for everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate the comments in there. I think if there's a couple of things which is I think is some really important points to come right through there. In regards to the LRF responsibility, it is primarily focused on regards to responding to an event that's happened. Depending on whatever the risk is, there will be individual agencies' responsibility in regards to working through that prevention element. The LRF, and I'll probably touch on language, is about that preparedness element of it. So when I'm talking about that whole society approach, is really trying to get people to understand what they can do to prepare themselves and we'll touch on flooding, on the event of flooding, or what they can do if flooding is arriving. So an example, it will be things like making sure that if your valuables can be lifted higher into the house, they can make sure electrical equipment is switched off. When the flooding has come into the property, is to not touch the electrics until it's been checked over by an electrician. It's making sure that people can be absolutely safe. There is also an area where, and it's actually through our emergency planning team, which is the LCC team, that actually do an awful lot of work in regards to the supporting of local community groups and community hubs. that come together in regards to when we are having the floodings, that can be a real focus of information, focal for information in regards to support and actually help the passing through of what's happening in their areas, what they can do to help themselves, understanding where some probably vulnerable people are, so we can direct their resources to support them. So that's when I'm mentioning about the whole society approach, is about bringing them communities together, which is not necessarily the local resilience forum responsibility. Is the LCC's emergency planning that do all that good work, and they do all that focus to make sure that actually those local communities can work together.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. The Chief Fire Officer is touched on some of the points that I was going to raise. Remember that on a couple of previous occasions, I have urged all members to support their communities. And I know City of Lincoln doesn't have parishes, but most of Lincolnshire County councillors have parishes and town councils or similar in their communities. So it really is incumbent on people across our county in those communities to come together to think about what may happen in times of emergency. So who are their local councillors? What is the role of a local councillor? How local councillors can support their communities? Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses? Where are the opportunities? Where are the threats? For example, do you have a village hall? Can you encourage people who have been flooded out to come to a village hall or a rest centre or something else that you've got organised in your village? Just to come together as a community before these things happen. So when the rain starts coming down at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're not scratching around trying to find those details, trying to find those contacts and those supporters. You already have them. So in the few days before a flooding incident may happen, you already know where the sandbags are available. You're not thinking about it when it's lapping at your garden gate. You've already got those details. So that's, I think, what the Chief Fire Officer was saying, when we need some communities can help themselves by doing those things early. Our colleagues in the County Emergency Centre are going around district councils, talking to district councillors, trying to get district councillors to support their communities to say, right, this is what an emergency plan can do. This is how you can help yourselves before something momentous happens. And all those resources are available through our colleagues at the County Emergency Centre. They want every parish or every community in the county to have an emergency plan, and they will help you get it and put it together and maintain it and refresh it, and to make sure that all those details are up to date. We know people, move out of communities, so when they've gone, how can you replace that resource? That, I think, without putting words into your mouth, Chief Fire Officer, I think that's where you were going.
Perfectly summarised, thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Mr Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Last year I attended the emergency centre where they went through a tabletop exercise. I assume we'll get another one this year and hopefully learn from some of the recent flooding events to maybe tweak things or coordinate better. Thank you.
Yes, so we've got quite a robust training and exercise planning through the LRF, which I'm happy to have that shared outside of this meeting. So yeah, but clearly the first thing we need to do is just really understand the lessons learned from the two significant flooding events, and that will form the training and exercise moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to share something with you. I mean, when I was young, we used to live in a block of flats, which is each block of flats used to have like 5 floors. So there used to be a lot of families there. And I remember every 6 months we used to have these drills of how to evacuate the building, because it's 5 floors. You will have like probably around from the ground on 12 flats in each one, and then you have 5 main gates to take to each part. It's like 5 buildings joined together. So there used to be like 36 blocks of that. So we used to have a map, And I remember the fire brigade used to come in the summer and they come in winter, and they trained the mothers with kids how to evacuate the building, and this show was the assembly room, the assembly point. So I remember we used to go out, and it was like a nice day for the kids with their mothers. We play, but it was very, very detailed, and it was very good for every family of how to evacuate the kids and how to get out of the building in a safe way. And the fire brigade used to talk to us, and sometimes you have some candies if you are lucky. So I just wonder, because here I've been living in England now for over 28 years, and the residents tend to rely on services instead of being creative of how to deal with situations. Sometimes I feel that we are weak, because when I talk to my neighbors, we can do that, we have to do that instead. And then there is the law, the legislation, so people, they panic in many ways. And I will come to Councillor Corey, what she said about like sandbags. I can assure you, I live by Haven Bank. I don't think so anybody have any sandbags. So in case of any floods by Haven Bank, I think the Widham people will definitely panic. Where will we go? I mean, is there a place where to gather and be safe? So we don't have that kind of communication between us. So what I will do next time is, because we have a neighborhood meetings every Tuesday, the last Tuesday of every month, I'm going to stress to them the idea of how to deal with the flood, because we are already talking about how to clean the whole neighborhood and make it as a competition. Now we go to the risk of how to act and help each other in case if there is any floods. And I think it's very important for the communities to be probably dealing with the situation themselves, in case if there is any delay, or the fire brigade will attend something which is much more dangerous and more important. So we can categorize our priorities better, and the services can be at ease dealing with the major incident. And as you know, if we have minor one, we do it different way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. A lot to think about there. Would you like to respond to that? Sorry, Councillor Corey.
Yeah, apologies, Chairman. Thank you for that, Councillor Danley. Please, please, please contact the County Emergency Centre. They will guide you. They will tell you how to do it, because there are legal requirements in place. For example, if you do something, you need to let them know, because you need to be insured, and all the information or the advice you're giving, you need to make sure that it's up to date and correct. So please talk to the County Emergency Centre. They will give you some information, and then you can impart that to your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So one of the suggestions I have suggested to that committee is to have leaflets written in board lines and explaining what you can do. So I think that will be probably a good step to start with. So just to get an idea if a flood arises, so you don't have to panic. This is a leaflet. Any house can have it. And I think we will do what you say. I think I will follow that steps, and hopefully things will go from there and get probably expanded to other communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs. Clark.
Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence. Yeah, about communities helping themselves. So within the division that I've had to work through, and I just want to bring it up so that I can highlight a point of how we've been able to help ourselves. On the low points in the old estate of St Giles, some of you will know where that is, there have been some rather very nasty surface water flooding issues, which we had to contact one of our partners to come and deal with a specific problem, which they did in the end. But in order to help ourselves, I have a storm alert app, and many of the residents have a storm alert app. So we stayed in touch whenever there's a nasty storm approaching, and where we know these low points are in that particular division, in that particular area, we are in touch with each other. And I actually go out. Poor Mike has had to drive me at various times through the night to make sure that certain areas are not flooded and that residents are actually out helping themselves. And I can say that prior to that happening, I was able to ask for support from Lincolnshire County Council, who did deliver sandbags prior to this event happening, and it did help. So there are lots of things that we actually do to help ourselves and stay in contact with each other when certain things are going to happen, certainly as far as the weather is concerned, to help alleviate any situation and communicate with each other. So we do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of things I probably just wanted to come back. I mean, first of all, Councillor Clark, I mean, I think it is just worth noting, actually, we've had two really significant flooding events, and from our experience of a fire and rescue service being out in the communities have absolutely been quite fantastic in quite some really devastating periods, especially when we've had many properties that have been hit with Storm Bebet and Storm Henk as well. I think the one positive outcome that I'd like to see out of these events that it is raising the awareness and the understanding of the flood risk within the counties. And going to your point, Councillor Denny, where I'm coming through to this is, I think is more heartwarming that those discussions are being happened now at local community level. Just to support Councillor Corey's point, so our emergency planning team that's headed by Ian Reid, who would have been here today but unfortunately wasn't able to come. He'd be the first to say to, if you get in contact with Ian Reid's team, so they have the training and they have the packages all there ready, and they've been delivering this out to many parishes across the county already, and that's being refreshed, and that comes with specific grab bags with equipment and information and some of the points that you've mentioned there, which can be really useful to give that information out to local communities. So I think it's just a question of accessing that and making sure that we've got a really consistent approach across all the parishes, that everybody can work together, because I think the one thing that will absolutely help is that communication across directly to the parishes, to the local communities, to give them the best information.
Sure. Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to come back and say I really think what you said, Councillor Clark, was really positive. And where people can help themselves, I think that's a really positive, good thing. But my point was, I don't think, not everybody has the same capacity to help themselves, and there should be a realisation of that, and there shouldn't be an expectation that people do this, this and this if it's something that they can't physically or financially do. That was the point that I was making. And actually the agencies have to be the umbrella that protects people, and
Sure.
that's what we pay our taxes for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps Councillor Lee might benefit from attending some member development training that has been available. I know that you work and that you can't attend them all, but all those questions will be answered, that when it gets down to one of these emergency events and we work with our partner agencies, the granular information that is available to support agencies, to our partner agencies there to support people who are not able to help themselves, all that information is available, all that coordination's there. We do help those, but on a wider basis. Also, if your next door neighbour, if you know your next door neighbour isn't mobile, and that there's a flood event coming, and you've got your emergency plan, and you know what to do with the emergency plan, you can support your neighbour. It's these kind of neighbourhood things, and so please, next time you see a member dev event, if you can't attend the first one, there will be another one at a later date. Please do attend, and you'll see what support's available and how much detail, granular detail, right down to individual households of how we can help people who can't help themselves.
Thanks. I just wanted to say on both of the occasions that I've wanted to go, I've spoken to the chair because they were both, I only work one day a week at the hospital. They were both on dates that I couldn't make. There's absolutely no consultation with members on when those dates are set for. You'd perhaps get better attendance if there was. So whilst I'm sure it is a good idea to go to those kind of events, you know, we have to be realistic about consulting with people and fitting around everyone to enable them to attend those kind of events. But I'm sure they are really valuable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark, the delivery plan attached to Appendix B to the business plan has 19 key deliverables, but no timescales are included for completion. Are there any deliverables that are a priority over others?
Not necessarily which were going to be a priority. They'll have different timescales, so they'll all be being working by the various working groups pretty much at the same time. Again, just probably what's reiterating what I said before. Any of the learning from the recent debriefs will probably change any priority areas. So we're just going to wait until we get the final outcome of those before we can really start nailing on some of those dates and making sure that we can make sure we're in the best position as we are now. It will always be fairly flexible and agile throughout the 3 years, and we'll have to move those competing areas, but they're pretty much they're all being worked on at the same time.
Okay, thank you. And in relation to the projects listed on page 123, which have been funded by the government, are there any ongoing costs to the LRF for maintaining these projects? And how will the LRF evaluate the effectiveness of these projects?
No, there's no costs that are being picked up by Lincolnshire's LRF in regards to that. We give a quarterly update through to DLUC and Cabinet Office in regards to the progress of these projects, and we feed in regards to evaluation of what the impact of it is. Most of them are all in relatively early stages of the projects in regards to being rolled out, so we haven't got a full evaluation of the impact yet. But once the whole of the projects are being finished, then again it will be dependent on whether there will be central government funding to continue with those assets. It kind of links in regards to the wider LRF funding that is only agreed up until 2025. But beyond that, there isn't guaranteed funding. However, the expectation is because of the rising profile and the recognition of the impact of LRFs, that funding will continue. But we haven't had that confirmation from government at this moment in time.
Okay. I see no further speakers. So thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. And thank you, Mark and Ryan, for your presentations. I'm going to propose that the committee has reviewed the report and agrees to receive an annual update of progress against the LRF Business Plan 2023 to 2026. Can members please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That's all agreed. We'll now move on to item 9, Trading Standards Food Safety Activity 2022-2023. This item can be found on pages 141 to 158 of the agenda pack and provides the committee with an update on the work undertaken by Lincolnshire County Council Trading Standards Service in respect of food safety standards enforcement in the financial year 2022 to 2023. Actions required. The Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee is invited to review and comment on the contents of this report and the delivery of the food safety and standards work undertaken by the Trading Standards Service. The report will be presented by Mark Keel, Head of Trading Standards. We also have Paul Dolby, Senior Trading Standards Officer, and Chad Saratoon, Principal Trading Standards Officer, in attendance to help answer any questions. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'm not going to comment too much on the report. It's there for people to read. I'm quite happy to take questions on that. There's just something I'd like to address following last year's Scrutiny committee meeting where we looked at the food work. Councillor Key provided some challenge on the number of inspections that we carried out. And I just wanted to reassure the committee really that we did go back and look at that. One of the first things I did when I went back to the office was to check where we were in the financial year, and there was we'd achieved the target of the previous year, and we were looking at a modest increase, which I think is reflected in this report. That also prompted us to look at were the ways that we could do things differently. Our food officers were spread across various teams, undertaking generic roles, so would have been doing work in addition to food work. So what we've looked at as part of this and part of our training was to bring the officers together within a team. So we've gone to more specialist teams. Chad currently runs our food and metrology team, and it gives us an opportunity to focus on those areas in work. It won't be reflected in this report because we couldn't implement it until June of last year, while we were looking at consulting with staff and getting some feedback on the changes that we were proposing. But it will reflect in next year's report, so there's a bit of a lag there in the numbers. But we think those numbers will be closer to 300 next year. It's looking at where we are at the present moment, so quite an increase in where we were. But I just really wanted to thank Councillor Key for the question. It did prompt some discussion and us to have a look at the way that we're working, and Martin kindly supported us to make those changes in-house to reflect that. So thank you very much. But happy to take questions now.
Councillor Key.
Better be me first then, Mark. Well, thank you for taking that on board, because sometimes you sit here and you do wonder, and this is with the greatest of respect, you wonder if any of the things that you say are, first of all, make sense, and secondly, anybody's going to do anything about it. So it's really nice to hear that perhaps some comments have been useful. That's the main thing. I worked in food businesses for many, many years. I don't now, but I did. So I do feel like I know a little bit about it, even though maybe some of it's out of date. And although you were very kind about me questioning you, and you did say that, obviously there's a bit of a lag with the figures, I do want to challenge you again, because that's what I'm here for. According to the code, it says here, you should complete 740 interventions in a year. Now, in this report, it's a very good report, but it doesn't actually, I can't find anywhere where it says how many you've done, because they're not just food inspections, are they? They cover all sorts of things. So how near are we to 740, would you say? Because obviously if we keep, and it's a bit difficult to put this, but if we keep not meeting that target, we're going to slip further behind, and you can never catch up. And going back to the first item we did today, the budget for trading standards, there's no increase in your budget. So I just wonder whether there should be an increase, because trading standards is a really important function, a statutory function, and I just wonder whether we do give it enough importance as an authority, because it is people's health and well-being that's at stake here, and we've seen some horrible cases in the press over the years, and I do question whether we give it the priority that maybe it once had, or maybe that it should have. Thank you.
Yes. In terms of where we are with those number of interventions, we do fall short, and I can't argue against that. We are a way short of what's required under the code, and we recognise that. Yes, additional resources would be nice, but one of the challenges we have actually is getting food qualified officers into the service. So we have a limited number of frontline officers who are fully food qualified and competent, and we are doing our best to train officers coming through, because we struggle to recruit into the county officers who have a full food qualification. It takes a while for people to qualify. At the moment, there is a trading standards professional apprenticeship, which started at the beginning of last year, the first cohort. We've got a couple of officers who are on that, new recruits who are undertaking that. It's taken until just before Christmas to ascertain how that qualification will stack up against the statutory qualification for food. And we now know that the provider, the training provider, has worked with the people behind the qualification and the Food Standards Agency to map it against the full qualification, the statutory qualification. Once they've done the food element of that apprenticeship, passed the apprenticeship, they will need to do a food oral exam which is run by the Chartered Institute of Trading Standards. They'll still need to see the oral exam, but if they pass the oral exam, then they'll be a fully qualified food officer. That said, that's a long way still from being totally experienced and having that broad range of knowledge and skills that somebody like Paul with 40 years service is going to have. So at the moment, where we're just about keeping pace with people who have retired or are coming up to retirement to maintain the number of qualified officers we've got, but it's a little bit difficult to expand, and we're hoping in the next 2 to 3 years we'll have a few more food qualified officers, which will allow us to implement, hopefully get closer to those targets.
May I come back? That's great. I think that my overriding point is, though, are we as an authority giving you enough, what's the word I'm looking for? Priority. Because this is a statutory service, and I just feel that we could give it more support and more prominence in what we do, because obviously with what I've done before, I know how important it is. The other thing that I did ask you about, I remember in the past, was the relationship between the district councils and the county council and the liaison between them. The code says that they have to inform you in 28 days of a new business. Well, in today's modern world of pressing buttons, a new business can do a lot of damage in a month. And it seems to me that that is too long, and that may be the code, but it doesn't seem sensible, because surely on the day that they register, almost that day you could be told, because these businesses come and go, and dodgy businesses set up and shut down very quickly. So have I made myself clear, Mr. Chairman? I just feel we should give this more importance.
Very clear. Before I turn to you, Mark, I'm just going to turn to Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Key, the total number is shown at 8.1 in the report, but you can see it's 163 inspections. So you can see we are significantly below the 740 in terms of where we are. We have recognised that, and Mark and I have spoken about that, and there are some challenges around the staffing being qualified to do those, and our ability to kind of do more. We want to do more. Whilst it doesn't feature in the plan in terms of finance uplift for next year, it's not that we're then not looking at it, and we may put in a proposal. There is some national drives. This is a national issue. It's not just Lincolnshire County Council. It is a national reduction of kind of food inspections taken over nationally. That's not an excuse that Lincolnshire County Council shouldn't look to do something different, and that's something that Mark and I are picking up on. In terms of your second question around the relationship with the districts, so firstly, we are hearing you around our LCC doing enough, and it's something that Mark and I are looking at based on some national information that's coming out, and also our local practices and procedures as a result of this paper and inspection. What we can say is that we have inspected more this year again than we have last year, so the picture is improving. Which is good news, but again, it's still short of the 740. Relationships with districts and their sharing of information, I'll let Mark, because we only just spoke about that this morning, so I'll let Mark update on where we are with that and what we're looking to do in terms of improvements.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Yeah, so I think the 28 days in the code probably goes back to the days where it was a paper system. The majority, I think 6 of the 7 districts are signed up to the FSA electronic registration system now. So we do get those through much quicker than we were doing under the old regime. In terms of liaison with them, Paul regularly attends meetings with environmental health colleagues. And we are working with information governance on a full information sharing agreement that they're drafting up for us at the moment, which will include all of the referrals and information sharing requirements that we need with them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I picked up on your comments there about succession planning, that you're working on that. Where do you sort of go for potential apprentices to join this scheme is my first question. Thank you.
We have a little bit of a different approach to apprenticeships. For us, we go out to recruit entry-level trading standards officers. We don't treat them as apprentices. These are people who are interviewed as potential trading standards officers to come into the service and attain a qualification. The apprenticeship is a means of attaining a formally recognised trading standards qualification. There's been various versions of the qualification through my 30 years working for trading standards, and the apprenticeship is the newest version of that. Prior to that, there was a qualification that was overseen and implemented by the Chartered Institute of Trading Standards. It's quite expensive to put people through, and the support is not as robust as through the apprenticeship. They get a lot more tutor time, a lot more guided learning through that course. So we've opted to go with the Trading Standards Apprenticeship as the latest incarnation of the qualification. So we go out to recruitment, and generally speaking, these are Lincolnshire residents who are applying for jobs. We have people of various ages. Some have had previous experience in other regulatory services. Some of them come to us as a career change, and some of us come to us, having finished school or uni. And we've had a really good apprenticeship take up over the last 4 or 5 years. We've had some really good recruits come through. But like I say, we don't take them on as an apprentice in the old way, I suppose, taking them on to complete apprenticeship and hope there's a job at the end for them. These are, considered to be people who are suitable to be trained as trading standards officers, and that's what we look to do.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
On page 146, you mentioned food complaints, and I was just wondering, you say you do a sort of a filter process using service intelligence. Do you ever record or note how many complaints are surreptitious or malicious, so that you can target that person again if they ever complain about another service or item?
We can do searches on the person who's made the complaint, or on telephone numbers associated with complaints, or emails or things like that. So we can check to see if somebody is making repeated complaints. It's not something that happens very often. I'm not saying we never get the odd malicious one, but we try to be open-minded and see what's what. But if there was somebody who was making repeated offences, it would become apparent, because the same people are reviewing those complaints. It's the small intelligence team that we have who go through those complaints in the initial stages. So they're more likely to pick it up, I would say. But we can run reports to find out.
Thank you for that.
Okay, next I've got Councillor Danny, followed by Councillor Mrs. Clark. So Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I worked in food industry for quite a long time, especially in, restaurants and things like that. So we used to have codes, we used to have training, we used to have self-hygiene. And to be honest with you, I've been to too many restaurants around here, and, the self-hygiene has been dropped completely. When you go and just have a coffee and you see somebody with a black T-shirt, which doesn't look nice and looks torn. So, and this is people working for big companies. And I wonder why the standards and the level of hygiene in big companies has dropped a big time, because I work for Frankie and Benny's at Cambridge, and I had staff with piercings, and you tell them you shouldn't have piercings. From my own training, we used to have only the wedding band, a watch as a manager, and everything has to be, dressed properly. The waiter, nothing. Only studs, they have small. So now, we see it's completely different. And my question is, the big companies are getting away with these standards because we cannot touch them? between brackets, they do protect themselves by having a huge, massive training books that you have to go through with every member of staff. And I can tell you, Frank and Benny's then, it takes 3 months to train one person and you have to sign everything, even how to hold a knife. However, they cannot tell to the staff to take their person before they go to work. So I just would like to know your opinion if they are getting away with the murder and we just let it slip. Thank you.
Right. In terms of the hygiene issue, that would fall to environmental health and not to us. But we do have the same, well, we come up against the same processes when we're looking at trading standards, investigations and offences. When you're looking at larger companies, they have quality manuals, they have training manuals, they have training records. And you know, part of our job is to unpick that. It's to audit those processes and it's to make sure that what the manual says should happen is actually happening in effect. You know, it's part of the process of investigation. It doesn't necessarily mean that we don't target big companies because you know they can commit offences the same as small ones. It's just it's a different type of investigation. We have to look at all of that potential due diligence that they have and make sure that it's been followed as it should be. All the records are there to make sure that people have signed off what they said they were going to sign off. And if we find problems with that, then you know then further action can be taken. But it is one of the options that is open to a big business. They have the money to invest in their quality systems, and they can, and sometimes do have very good and robust policies and processes in place.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs. Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's really interesting. I would like to know, I'll just remind us, because it's a while since I've seen you, and you are actually, I will acknowledge, one of our busiest services because you cover a very broad church. It's not just about food, it's about all sorts of things. But we're looking at food today, and on your chart there, it says that restaurants and cafes of 18 inspected, 11 were not to the correct standard. Also the same with takeaways, which is a higher number. Can you just remind me as well, are you covering the whole of the county? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we obviously we know where we've been because we have records of that. We know what premises we've got on our database. And yeah, well, there'll be some revisits to places where we've had issues, but if we've taken samples or we've inspected and there hasn't been a problem, then we'll look at other places as well. So we do go around the county. Officers are, you know, they're based in the north and south, and we do try to get as far and as wide as we can.
Okay, Councillor Sear.
Thank you, Chair. A good report. I like to point it out. It's a food hygiene, separate and food allergy. Okay, it's we have the visitor. Somebody reports us to do with food allergy, separate and hygiene, and I know Chase standing covered a lot of things. But it's nice to know more. So like now, you go into even a community hall, you go check if they have food allergy thing. They're separate thing than the hygiene, completely, it's separate. Then I noticed you recover some of the residential home or nursing home. It's really, really good because from look at it, you have to work hard a lot more to be checked into it about, you know, food allergy is important. Then the hygiene is like keen, but allergy, a lot of these days, a lot of people have a lot of allergy on all kind of things. So thank you very much. So as you pointed out, it's not just the hygiene, it's separate, it's a food allergy. You have two different certificates, different category all together, but you work together. Thank you very much. So you pointed out, hygiene is a hygiene, allergy for food allergy is separate, you know, and you need to do that course as well. Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of looking at food hygiene and food allergy, but the allergy aspect of food safety is a shared responsibility with us and environmental health. So it may be that they go in and do their hygiene inspection, they will look at the allergy aspects of it. If we go in and do our standards inspection, we will look at the allergy aspects of it. But we share information between each other where we identify problems. And we can pass that on. But yes, yeah, they tend to be looked at as separate things within a sort of food best practice model.
Okay, Councillor Mr Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 148 and 149, you list a number of businesses, complaints and compliant or non-compliant. On the non-compliant side, do these firms get a fine, or are they given a specific time to rectify whatever was wrong? Because what did concern me was you visited 9 supermarkets and 7 were at fault. And considering they're the bulk where people get their food from, that's most concerning. Thank you.
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the non-compliance as to what follow-up action is. Quite often it may be labelling that we've identified, or there might be some allergen information that's missing. In terms of the supermarkets, I'm not 100% sure what those non-compliances were. I could find out and let you know. But it could be something like something past its use by date that's been picked up by an officer. Probably not, serious on a huge scale, given the number of products that they have, but it's just something that somebody's missed and we've picked up. So some advice will be given, and a follow-up inspection would be carried out. So it can be a serious, if you go in there, there's a whole shelf full of stuff that's past its use by date. But if you've gone in and it's just something that's a day afterwards, then we remove it, we point it out, we leave some advice, and we go back and sort it. So it depends on the nature as to what follow-up action would be, but there's a lot of advice provided.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for
Councillor
that.
Mrs Clark.
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead, Mr Clark.
Going forward, would we be able to know on your next report where there are serious issues, so that we are aware of possibly the dangers that we're getting in various businesses, that we could maybe target more? Thank you.
Yeah, I can certainly provide a bit more detail about what those non-compliances were about.
Okay, Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you for indulgence, Chair. Thank you. Sorry, I wanted to come back to you before, but I wasn't quick enough. On the a couple of things actually. On the hygiene thing, and you mentioned environmental health. So where a takeaway, for instance, is established and it's working, and there might be accommodation above, is that inspected as well? Because you've got people maybe living above the shop who are working in the shop, and so the two things are kind of linked. So there's that one thing I want to ask about, because that does worry me. And the other thing I wanted to ask about, and wondered if you had any information on, was cost of living impact. People will be looking for cheaper food. They are looking for cheaper food. And are you noticing a trend where people are accessing cheaper food and perhaps they've been non-compliant? And that's really where I'm going with that, because I think, given the fact that things are difficult, we can't get away from that. It doesn't matter what governance is in place, things are going to be difficult. Is that something that we should now be looking at and monitoring a bit more closely? People will try to get value for money, and especially where food is concerned. Is that something we need to be more conscious of, please? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Right, so I break that down a little bit. In terms of living accommodation above on a hygiene inspection, I couldn't comment. I'm not sure what environmental health look at beyond what's around the restaurant and the food preparation area. In terms of trading standards interest there, Obviously, there's a potential there for modern slavery and people being trafficked into work in these establishments. We do work with colleagues in immigration and police teams as well. We can enter premises using our powers, and we can bring other colleagues with us if we see fit, if there's an issue. So we do go in, carry out food inspections in restaurants and that type of places. If we start talking to staff and we have concerns, then we can call immigration officers in and they can do further identity checks, and they can look at the rest of the property as well, speak to the people, see what's going on there. And we have had some success in identifying people who are working with no right to work, and potentially looking at the conditions that they're living in. But we're really the way in, and then the other agencies pick that up and follow those investigations through. So yeah, it is something that is on our radar. In terms of cost of living, yeah, as money gets tighter, people will look for other alternatives. I'm not seeing anything particularly coming through that suggests that people are setting up underhand businesses to get rid of old food, but that doesn't mean to say, you know, if people don't report it, then we don't necessarily know about it. So there's always a danger when money becomes tight. Unscrupulous people will look for opportunities to exploit it. But there's no evidence that we're seeing that at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Is it worth looking at perhaps getting some information? I know environmental health is not our area, but are we able to gather something to give that some balance so that when we're looking at food premises, we're also looking at the other impact side of it because of employees, it's health and safety?
Okay, it's noted. Thank you. Mark, given the main areas of concern arising from the complaints and inquiries received and from the food sampling undertaken relate to allergens and labelling, what else can be done to raise awareness of the risk to the public of undeclared allergens and cross-contamination? And leading on, are there any businesses where this is a persistent issue? And if so, are there any legal actions that can be taken, please?
It's all around education.
Yeah.
And that has improved. There's lots of sources of information for businesses to get the advice that they need, and for consumers as well to be asking the questions. In terms of what people can do, it's really, it would be handy for us to know where they encounter problems. So if, for example, somebody goes into a restaurant and they order food and they're not asked about, does anybody have any allergens, then that's a potential flag and something that could be reported through. I wasn't made aware of that. So, you know, it's around reporting, then we can do the follow-up work in terms of inspection and providing relevant advice. We do have a variety of resources that are available for business. There is a Greater Gwent Food Group advice video about allergens that's aimed at business managers. It's in multiple languages, and it runs for about an hour and a half, but provides quite a comprehensive picture of what's required. Off the back of that, we had an officer embedded with Business Lincolnshire, and with some Business Lincolnshire funding, we produced a pared down version of that video to provide advice that could perhaps be used for training for staff. It's a bit shorter, run time's about half an hour. It's been viewed around 300 times, I think. It's available on YouTube. There's, you know, the link's available. We promote that. So there's lots of resources there for people to access, but it is getting that message across that businesses need to provide the information and to make those checks with their customers. and customers need to engage with the business and make them aware and ask questions. So it's a two-way street on that front.
Okay, thank you. Just one more from me. The table on paragraph 8.1, which lists the type of businesses found to be compliant or non-compliant, shows that there were 13 other food premises which were non-compliant. Can you just briefly tell the committee what others there are out there?
I'd have to go back and look at the actual breakdown of because I ran the report and it comes up with an other category, so I'd have to actually go and look at the physical names to identify the types of business.
There may well be small factory units or large factory units that, that were inspected for things like organic avocados that aren't organic, and we've been there to oversee the relabelling to conventional product.
Okay.
So they won't be listed as a...
Sure. That gives an example, so that'll do for now, yeah. Okay, Councillor Danny, followed by Councillor Key.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is probably, it's just, it's regarding barber shops. I noticed, like in Boston, I think for the last 3 months, 4 shops open within the range of each other, and I tell you, it's just growing. It's £15 a haircut. So it's quite lucrative play, you know, it makes money, it's good business. My concern, because some of these gentlemen opening these businesses, I don't know if they have any courses for health and safety or cross-contamination especially, because, you know, using razors and machines, you can cut blood, you can go to, I don't know how they disinfect their equipment. So I wonder if, have you ever came across a shop where probably they don't disinfect their equipment, or what do you do when they open a new shop? Do you have any visit to these places? Thank you.
Well, we wouldn't look at that aspect again because it's a hygiene matter, so it's probably worth reporting it to environmental health. They're not strictly food businesses, but if there is some sort of disease risk, they may carry out some sort of checks. Like you say, there is the potential for, you know, even something as simple as passing nits around, I suppose, if equipment's not cleaned and disinfected properly. But it's not something within our remit to look at. In fact, for a barber shop, we may look at things like cosmetic products if they were selling them, shampoos, conditioners, that type of thing, hair care products, electrical safety for any appliances that they may be selling in there tends to be more in hairdressers than actual barbers, and pricing, I suppose, would be the other one. But they're not high on our inspection priority list.
Okay, moving on, Councillor Key.
Yes, thank you. I waited because I didn't want to be taking over. Just going back to the figures, well, not that I ever do.
You carry on.
740 businesses in categories A and B should have an intervention. And it was said that the figure is actually included in 8.1, 163 inspections, but that isn't actually correct because interventions is other things besides inspections. So I was thinking whether, for the next year's report, whether we could have how many interventions we should be making and how many we're actually making broken down into the different things like inspections, monitoring, surveillance and all the other things, and maybe what sort of a backlog has built up, because we've obviously got a backlog and that would be more easy to see rather than having to pick out the individual figures. I don't know whether that's possible, Mark, but it would be simpler for me. Thank you.
Yes, we can have a look at how we present the figures. One thing to bear in mind is there's a new food safety risk assessment being implemented this summer. So those boundaries and the numbers, we're not quite sure how that's going to impact us at the moment and how that's going to change the number in each category. But we are expecting our database to be updated sometime in June or July with the new risk assessment applied to all of the food premises. So we'll see how that pans out, see what amendments they make to the food code, and then next year, obviously, the report that we do will be based on this year's figures, but we'll try and get some information on that as well going forward.
Thank you, Mark. And as you can tell, I would much much like trading standards, the profile of trading standards to be raised in our authority, because I think it's really important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Got one more speaker, Councillor Lee.
Yeah, I just echo your sentiments, Councillor Key. I would ask as well if we could consider this at the next item as something that actually we don't wait a full year for a report, because I'm not being critical of the officers, I'm just saying, you know, if there's a backlog now and we're struggling, I think actually we don't need to leave it a year till we look at it again, and perhaps we look at it in 6 months instead. Can I put that down for the record, Chair?
Okay, noted. Councillor Mrs Clark.
Oh, you're being good to me today, aren't you? Thank you very much, Chair, for indulging me. I just want to back that statement up, actually. I can see, and I think everybody here, well, I can't assume that, but it feels to me that we are recognising the increase in the level of work that you are having to cover because you work with other agencies, and we're asking for breakdown. I'm certainly interested to see more breakdown, and because I want to see the impact that things are having on the service, and I think you're one of the most important services that we have. So yeah, the more information we've got to scrutinise, the better for you, and I would like to see that you're pushed forward a lot more than you are. And how often do you, excuse me, Chair, how often do you rely on public intelligence to come to you? It's important, isn't it? If people are not happy, they must contact trading standards, mustn't they? Yeah.
It really is the lifeblood of what we do. You know, a lot of the work that we undertake is intelligence led, and we need that intelligence to come through from consumers, from businesses, from partners. I think looking at when I started in trading standards, we had our own advice service, and we were getting in the region of 16,000 inquiries a year at that time. Obviously now we use the Citizens Advice Service. The internet is there. There are a lot more ways that people can access advice and get the help that they need. So we're seeing around about 6,500 inquiries now coming through the Citizens Advice system, which is a significant loss in intelligence to us. That's supplemented with around about 1,000 or so reports from other agencies, primarily police, immigration, customs, that type of people, Food Standards Agency, food related. So it does make a difference. So the more people report, the better picture we have, and the more targeted we can be with the resources that we have. We do some market surveillance work. Some of that is based on things that are identified nationally. Some of it is based on projects that have been undertaken regionally. So this year, for instance, we're looking at allergen labelling and food labelling in children's activity areas, so softball parks, petting zoos, that type of thing. So we're looking at the labelling requirement there because a problem was identified in a neighbouring authority. We've looked at it this year and found similar issues that we need to look at. So we do a bit of market surveillance, but a lot of what we do is intel-led.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. Thank you also to Mark, Paul and Martin for your contribution. I'm going to propose that the committee has reviewed the report and is satisfied with the delivery of food safety and standards work undertaken by the Trading Standards Service. Can members please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That is agreed. Item 9, Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This item is on pages 159 to 166 of the agenda pack and sets out the committee's work programme for 2020-2024. Actions required. The actions required by the committee are to review the work programme and highlight any additional scrutiny activity which could be included for consideration in the work programme. The report will be presented by Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer. So over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Chairman. So the committee's next meeting is on the 19th of March, where the committee will be receiving reports on the Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership annual report, the Q3 service level performance, and then you'll also be sitting as the Crime Disorder Scrutiny Committee to consider the update report on the domestic abuse strategy, and also on the serious violence in Lincolnshire, a position report in relation to that. In relation to future items, for the 14th of May, I've received a request to defer the Citizens Advice annual report to June or July, just to be able to include the March data from Citizens Advice. I'll speak to the chairman afterwards as to which meeting to defer that to. And I've made a note about including the annual update on the LRF business plan. So I'll speak to Mark about when to book that one in. And I've made a note as well about Councillor Lee's request for having a 6-monthly update on the trading standards food safety. So I'll chat with you as well about that.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Councillor Key.
Yeah, I just agree totally with Councillor Lee. I just wonder whether the timing needs to coincide with the new system that Mark mentioned, so that we can see the impact. Because I think you said the summer, Mark, for that.
It's coming in the summer, so what we could realistically do is bring forward the annual report from January. We could make it earlier in the year. It'll probably take us a little bit of time and providing there's no delays in the implementation, because we're relying on Food Standards Agency and external providers for that. But it should be, well, like I say, June or July time. So we're quite happy to bring forward the food report, and just I'll cover how that's affected things as part of that.
Thank you. I'm just concerned that you've no increase in your budget this year, and I'm just uneasy about that. If you have a lot to do, and you know, I do think that should be looked at now. You know, the budget. I know we talked about it at the beginning of the meeting, but it's come out now, particularly how much there is to do. So I'll be all for you being looked at more favourably. Thank you.
If Tracy liaises with Mark, and we'll coordinate that. Councillor Lee.
I've noticed on here, Chair, that Mark's coming back on the 24th of September anyway. Perhaps we could have a bit of an update then.
That's the annual trading standards review, so I can probably do both together if that's easier.
Can I just reassure Councillor Key as well? I'm putting together an alternative budget.
Okay, thank you. No further speakers? No? Okay, so thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. I propose that we approve the existing work programme as detailed on pages 159 to 166, subject to what we just spoke about. And that's all noted. So can I ask that you raise your hand if you agree? Thank you, that is agreed. And that also now concludes the business of the meeting. So thank you everyone for your attendance. You may now leave the council chamber. Thank you.
Is that they're dismissed?
Yeah, dismissed. Crew dismissed.